different installations around the state of Washington to get input from military spouses on challenges and possible solutions to employment for spouses of service members, both active duty and transitioning, and veterans as well. So we've done two of these so far. We've done one at Joint Base Lewis McChord, one over at Fairchild. This is the one that is targeted towards spouses of service members connected in either as a veteran or active duty member to Coast Guard District 13. This is actually part of a series of activities designed towards military spouses. Yeah. Sorry, we got a couple of different audio things in the room. We're trying to avoid redundancy here. So in any case, just trying to get input. So, sorry, let me start over again. I'm trying to juggle a couple of technology things here. Essentially, there has been a priority established by the Washington State Military Council around supporting military spouses. Part of this is to support the retention of active duty service members, but also understanding that the welfare, well-being, and readiness of our military force is really dependent upon supporting the entire family. So I'm going to start off and just do a couple of, or support a couple of introductions here, and then we'll go online to the folks who are attending remotely and give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves. First of all, I'd like to introduce Commander Jed Boba with Coast Guard Base Seattle. Jed, would you like to make a few introductory statements?
Sure, thanks, and welcome to Base Seattle. We're really excited to have this listening session here today with some great friends that I've worked with on the Washington State Military Transition Council over the past about year and a half that I've been on. As the council's kind of pivoted and the governor's pivoted to include spousal employment, primarily due to being a national security issue for the future generations of those serving in active duty, extremely important in the economy the way it is and the way it's growing. More and more households require two families to live a middle-style income or middle-class income, and that's important for our service, and it's important to attract and retain the types of great people that we have and that we want to serve in the military. So it's great that the state has the foresight to see that and to tackle that challenge. We acknowledge that within the military branches. It's hard for us to do it. We all need help. It takes a village to solve some of these huge problems that we have. And I think it's attainable, and I think it's solvable. So happy to hear and see the challenges from the spouses. I certainly have my spouse at home who's been a teacher. She's full-time with the school district, but it's the first time she's worked in about 10 years. So she took a break when we had kids. It was when we moved from duty station to duty station. It was hard for her to find childcare, to try to get her certification transition from California to whether it's Washington or Ohio or Virginia, and go through all those hurdles while I'm doing the things that I need to do to support as my employment for the Coast Guard. So she's back full time. Kids are older, a little bit more stable. There's still some credentialing issues that we're working through, but we certainly understand those challenges, and that's one snapshot, I think, of a bigger picture of people and folks. So happy to hear from the spouses that we have and people that have talked to a whole bunch of spouses over the years. I'm sure some of the things have changed over the years, but I'm sure there's a lot of consistencies from when I know you went out and talked at the stations. The Coast Guard has a big challenge, and I think opposed to some of the DoD, we have a very, I don't want to call it scattered, but we have a very distributed. Very distributed workforce throughout the country and throughout the globe. Very small stations. You look up and down the Oregon and Washington coast, and we have stations with 20, 30, 40 people. We have some a little bit bigger centers, but in those small remote stations, it is extremely difficult to provide these ancillary services, as opposed to a big Army base that maybe have 20,000 people. You get that you get that concentration of mass and you can put a lot of programs together. So Coast Guard is a challenge and specific, and it'll be a challenge going into the next 20 years. So with that, thank you, Mark.
Excellent. Thank you much. And I want to give an opportunity to introduce Heather Myles, who oversees transition and family programs here for District 13. Heather, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Heather Myles. I'm the Transition and Relocation Manager, as well as Ombudsman Coordinator and Spouse Employment. So my role is to help spouses with their career challenges, building resumes, swinging into different careers, learning how to pull those really key skills out of their resume so that they can transition as they move around the country and hopefully get their careers going.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Heather. Alfie, can you introduce yourself?
Certainly. My name is Elle Fiorello, and I am the director of your Washington Department of Veterans Affairs and also the Military Transition Council chair. And we have been with the Transition Council since 2013, but the work actually started in about 2008 as we mapped the transition of our service members into our communities, and found out through the years, and especially now that we're into 2019, that we invest a lot of resources on the transition and service member. We invest a lot of resources on our veterans, but we had not really made that aggressive move to be able to invest on the family and especially the military spouse. We know that the military spouse keeps everything together when those of us who deploy, and I'm also a military spouse, so I've been kind of on both sides of the coin, that it's important for us to be able to do that, especially in this climate now of retention of the very good people that are in our military. When the spouse feels fulfilled and we're able as a community to support through jobs or through childcare, all of those things that can make somebody being able to remain happy in the military, that family unit is going to be a lot more happier, and they're going to be more apt to stay in the military, and we need good people to stay in the military. So looking forward to hearing a lot from our spouses in not only the challenges, but also what are the solutions, because that's what we're looking for. As we put this plan together, this statewide plan that is going to have some implications that are going to be going nationwide, because people don't just stay here, they go to other places in the nation and the world, that we can actually have an impact on those who are here, but then as they leave, to also them take the word of the work that is taking place in Washington State. So we're just absolutely excited and delighted that those of you who are online will be able to have an opportunity to contribute today, but then this program will be online for others who are not able to join us today. So to please make sure that people are able to connect so that they themselves can also send us comments, because this doesn't end today. We're going to continue this process as we go along, but this feedback is absolutely critical for us to be able to put a plan together that is going to be based on our contributions, mutual contributions.
Excellent. Thank you, Alfie. And Susie, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Susie Levine. I'm the Commissioner for the Employment Security Department. Think of me as the Commissioner of Careers. And so I focus on all Washingtonians and all Washington employers. And how do we help all Washingtonians find opportunities that are right for them? And how do we help employers find the talent? In the next 5 years, we'll have about 740,000 jobs available in Washington State. And right now, we don't have the talent to fill it. But then you come to audiences like this, and they're looking for opportunities. So I want to do that matchmaking. I'm also the daughter of a military spouse. My father served in Vietnam, and I have heard a million stories growing up about the perilous experiences that she had. So for me, this is also very personal. I want to listen more than I speak, though, today. So I want to stop there, and I'll pepper in other comments. But fundamentally, this is about how do we help people even before they hit their transitions and go upstream, so that they never lose that dignity of work, but rather retain it through these very predictable transition moments. So with that.
And by the way, we are in a Coast Guard galley, so from time to time we're going to have some unexpected traffic in here. So bear with us. And I also want to say thank you to Captain Boba for being here is the first commander of the 3 now events that we have done that actually has been able to come and say a few words, and command support is so important, so I just want to say thank you for being here.
Excellent. All right, we'll do a quick introduction of some of the folks online. First of all, I do want to mention that we have some folks representing some of our congressional and Senate delegation with us. I'm going to start with John Esty, who I believe is on the line. John, can you hear me? John, you might be muted. All right, well, we're having some technical challenges. There we go, John.
I'm here to listen to it, see how we can. You're kind of cutting out.
All right, I can hear you now. Go ahead, John.
Yes, my name is John Esty. I'm a district representative for Congressman Dan Newhouse, and I'm here today to listen in on seeing if our office can do anything to support the military and military families. So, yeah, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you, John. We also have Madison Brown with Senator Cantwell's office. Madison, can you introduce yourself?
I'm Madison from Senator Cantwell's office. Very excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Excellent. And do we have Ramon Khanna with us? No? Okay. All right, then let's go ahead and do introductions of some of the folks we have on the line here first. So I'm going to start, I'm going to call it names, starting with Heidi Audette. Heidi, can you unmute and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Heidi Audette. I'm the Communications and Legislative Director for your Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs.
Excellent. Thank you, Heidi. Beverly, can you unmute and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Beverly Velasco, and I am the discharge spouse.
Excellent. And where are you located?
We are in Seattle area.
Excellent. Thank you, Beverly. All right. Cece, can you unmute and introduce yourself? You still may be muted. Cece, can you hear me?
This is Cece. I'm not sure if you're calling on me. It's a little noisy on your end.
Got it. Go ahead, Cece.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Cece Gannon. I am a Coast Guard spouse, and we are in the Vancouver, Washington area.
Excellent. Thank you, Cece. All right. Christine Moreland, can you unmute and introduce yourself? Christine, you may still be muted here.
Let's move.
Okay. All right, Christine, we'll come back to you. Flora Estrada, can you unmute and introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Flora Estrada, and I'm with the Office of Financial Management. I have been working in a veteran recruitment plan for about the past year. However, as I'm looking at the plan, it's evident to me and to OFM that we cannot just concentrate on the veteran community, that we have to concentrate on the spouses as well, and to tackle the problem that the military has to be able to be employed, not just from the veteran perspective, but also from the military spouse. So I'm excited to hear what is the barriers or obstacles that these military spouses have, and how can we assist at OFM.
Excellent. Thank you, Flora. Altavia, can you unmute and introduce yourself?
Good morning. This is Altavia, also with the Office of Financial Management. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I also work with the Veterans Initiatives in our office, and specifically one of the coordinators with the Military Spouse Empowerment Zone or Employment Empowerment Zone, and for the public or government sector. And so I'm also here
trying to glean some insights into some of the issues or concerns that are out there.
Excellent. Thank you, Octavia. All right. Mary Forbes, can you unmute and introduce yourself?
Good morning, top of the day to everyone. This is Mary Forbes, Assistant Director for your Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs. I've had the pleasure of working with this group for over a decade. Like Alfie said, started in 2008 while I was still on active duty, and then an honor to be in this position. So this is just a great natural progression. So look forward to hearing the rest of the session. Thank you. Have a great day.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary. Michael Farnham, can you unmute and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Farnham. I am the co-chair of the Washington State Military Transition Council Higher Ed Community of Practice, along with Mike Warwick. He's at Pierce College, or one of your Washington State community colleges. I'm with Pacific Lutheran University, one of your private universities. I'm the director of military outreach here. And I'm also here today with Eric Burns, our Vet Corps navigator, and both of us serve both veterans, dependent spouses, and children here at PLU. So we're excited to listen and learn and see how we might be able to do that job better.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Christine Moreland, were you able to make a connection?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Christine Moreland. I'm the Workforce Readiness Director for the Washington State SHRM, which is Society for Human Resource Management. Our Washington State SHRM and all of our affiliate chapters have created a partnership with the Yes Vets program, and I'm excited to be participating in these listening sessions so that as human resource professionals we can hear what those challenges are so we can help the employers understand the value of having military spouses and what a great candidate pool they are.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Christine. All right, we'll do a quick introduction of the folks in the room. So right next to me there is Gary Locke. Gary, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, Gary Lott, Communications, your Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs.
Excellent, thank you. And across the table, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Janet Alexander. I'm a Coast Guard spouse, but I'm also a brand ambassador for Operation Pop Smoke and an alumni from Commissions.
Excellent, thank you so much. Mike Miotti, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Mike Miotti. I'm the Executive Director of the Washington Student Achievement Council, which is a state agency involved in many higher education issues, but particularly managing all the state's financial aid programs. We also get involved in issues around residency and qualification for in-state resident status on tuition and other things that might be of interest.
Thank you, Mike. All right, and I'm guessing it's Ramon?
Yeah, Robin Kendall from Congressman Jayapal's office. Sorry for being late. I got stuck between two trains.
Welcome to BC.
Yeah, it made a 9-minute drive about 35 minutes. So thank you so much for having me here, having the office here.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, and Jason?
Yes, Jason Willett. I'm the Veterans and Military Family Program Operator for the state of Washington. Just on board this week with the Employment Security Department there on Susie's team. And I look excited to get out and seeing all the folks across the state. And really, this is personal to me too, as I just retired here recently after 27 years. So my wife of 25 years during that time, I understand the challenges and really interested to hear what the spouses have to say. So thanks.
Excellent. Thank you all very, very much. All right, so we'll go ahead and get kicked.
Just also want to take a quick moment to just welcome everyone that's watching via our Facebook live streams. Please make sure if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to bring up, just add them in the comments and we'll be glad to ask them towards the end of the session.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I should note, because I was asked by the PAO here for Coast Guard District 13 to let folks know that if this is being live streamed, the live stream is being recorded too. So anything that you are sharing here will be recorded for posterity. So thank you all very, very much. All right.
Mark, do you mind if I chime in with just one moment?
Sure.
What I failed to do at the beginning is also to thank those who served our country as spouses. You have worked so hard and served our country so beautifully, and you don't get to wear the cool uniform. So thank you so much for your service.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, so we've done, as I mentioned, 2 of these sessions so far. We've essentially organized these as reverse town hall meetings. So the idea is not that Alfie, Susie, Jed, and others speak to the spouses is so that the spouses can actually speak to the state leadership and the Coast Guard leadership to provide information that help us develop more effective policies, strategies, and programs for supporting military spouse employment. So we do have a list of questions that we've developed that we will sort of run through in order to provide some information on, or to guide the conversation. But really, we want to let the spouses take this conversation wherever they determine it should go. So we're going to start with the first question, which is, what are your most significant career roadblocks as a military spouse, and what are some solutions that you've seen work effectively? And it's this point that we really turn it over to the spouses. What are your thoughts and reactions? And so I'd probably ask Beverly and Cece, if you are muted, you can unmute yourself at this point and just chime in.
So the biggest thing I was at the last conference, and I kind of spoke on it briefly, but when I was we were stationed in Astoria, we lived in Warrenton. I went to the office for the employment, and they told me, well, your husband's high enough, just stay home. There's no employment around here. And I was like, yeah, but I have to get out of the house. And they were like, no, just stay home with your kids. They're little and your husband makes enough. And I was like, okay, maybe you're not understanding. If you've ever been in a house with 3 little kids, you need to get out. And they were like, well, there's nothing around here. And that's literally the whole conversation. And he was like, just go home. And I was like, okay.
Sorry, when you say into the office, which office was it?
It's in their
the workforce offices. Was this in the DoD office? Like, help me understand. I'm gonna give him a call after this is done.
Yeah. Have you ever been to the base in Astoria?
I have not.
Okay, so it's tiny, and there's Tongue Point, there's the air station, and then there's Camp Riley, which is the Army base, which is further south. This is in Oregon, so I don't know if it has to do much with this, but it's so it's inside the air station, and everything has like one little room. So you go in and kind of, I mean, the base there itself is super helpful if you don't need employment. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm. So a little backstory is my husband ended up with leukemia, and they literally waived everything so we could get married. The only thing that stopped us was we had to wait for the court in Astoria, and she was in session. After that, the XO of the base waived everything, because in Oregon you have to have 3 days, you have to have a blood test, you have the whole 9 yards, and then we were flown up here. So it was kind of a good thing I didn't have a job at that time, even though literally a month before that is when he said, go home.
Yeah.
So the support there is great, except for the employment part.
I think this does highlight something that's unique to the Coast Guard because of the nature of the Coast Guard business. Most of the stations are in remote areas.
Yeah.
It's just sort of part and parcel of the work, which also creates limited opportunities for employment.
Well, even here, because my husband worked at the federal building. Do you know Chief Petty Officer Alexander? He was the EOA here. He only retired like 5 years ago.
Okay.
So he most of his duty stations were here. Okay. So he walks on base and everybody knows him. So if you saw a picture of him.
But you will have to speak up for the folks who are on.
Sorry. But because it's a Coast Guard base, it's kind of like that everywhere. There's like the main part where everybody goes to work, but there's not a lot of support for spouses. There's not like independent places where they can. I mean, because they're so small, I kind of understand. Like with the Army base, they have like centers and everybody family. And here in the Coast Guard, even in Astoria, there was nothing for families. Like you get a once-a-year picnic, and I didn't find out about it until a week after it already happened. So that's another thing I was explaining to them is that communication with families on such a small base, even if it is in Seattle and there's big ships here and stuff, you would think that it has better communication family geared. It kind of sucks.
It's challenging. No, it is. It's challenging, right?
Yeah.
So, and some of that's some of the PII rules that we have.
Yeah.
And we can't go grab people's home phone numbers and telephone numbers and spouses, and just
Yeah.
shoot it out, right? So we have to actually have people sign up.
But we don't know about it, so it's
Right.
hard.
So it's active duty people.
Yeah.
So we had, and I know we're, just let me touch on this real quick. So on the furlough, so when we had the furlough, we had 2 town halls. And in those town halls, we had all the ombudsman come in with sign-up sheets for active duty members to sign up.
Yeah.
So we could get information to the spouses, because I'm as bad as anybody is
Yeah.
about getting stuff home,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Luckily, I have a
I'm the
secretary
same
that'll
way.
send the flyers to my wife, so I don't get in trouble, right? But that was the challenge, and we had the admiral, and I would announce that, like,
Yeah.
hey, sign up so we can get information home and all that. We'd have, for base, we had like 4 people sign up.
Yeah.
So we've gone out and delivered flyers to people from the ombudsman to get them home, and we don't know, they probably scan their backpack like mine do, and so that's the challenge, right? So we're trying, so I need you to help me
Absolutely.
figure out how to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
So we can talk after.
totally
We can talk after.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah, just a second here. I got an automated message that we've lost our connection to video.
automated message that we've lost.
All right, we're back and connected on audio. That was just for a second.
So you had that issue, of not being able to get employment when you needed it. If everything was working perfectly, what would have been some of the answers you would have wanted to get when it came to you being able to look for employment and being assisted?
A list of any job available anywhere within 10, 20-mile radius. I did interviews because I tried to do it by myself. And then it was, you're overqualified, because they knew we were Coast Guard, they knew we were leaving, they didn't want to hire us because it's a small town.
Were opportunities that are virtual, that don't rely on where you're located, were they made available to you, or is that something that has been introduced to you?
No, literally it was just go home and stay home. Yeah, there was no because I would have done that either, I mean,
Yeah.
when the kids were at school, I could have done that, but it wasn't even an option at that point. It was just literally, no.
Thank you.
We did have an online suggestion, just want to make sure we're involving them. It said to potentially leverage training for unit POCs tailored to family service members and utilize them for mandatory quarterly training. So I want to thank Sean for sharing that suggestion there.
Beverly and Cece, do you want to weigh in on either these thoughts or any other significant career roadblocks that you've experienced?
Hi, this is Beverly.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Keep cutting out. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes,
This
we
is
can hear you,
Beverly.
Beverly.
Okay. I'm going to chime in really quick here. Our household goods were to be delivered yesterday, but just showed up now, so I got to run. But just real quick, one thing that I think would be great, I don't know, I haven't seen anything yet as far as resources, like a list of emails or a list of websites that would be helpful, I think, of maybe staffing companies or bigger companies that have multiple jobs available, all the time. And I'm sure like Amazon here has always got something or whatever, just like a list of resources that would be helpful. Also, one thing I've noticed in the past is, as someone who moves frequently, I feel like maybe my resume would get passed over because my job experience changes every couple of years, and I feel like that has affected me in the past. So I don't know how friendly employers are here, or as far as changing jobs on a frequent basis. I've had that comment made to me before. Well, it looks like you change jobs every 2 years, and there's no real continuity with one particular company. So that's affected me in the past. So just a couple pieces that I thought I'd share.
Excellent. Thank you, Beverly. Cece, do you have any observations about these or these experiences or your own?
Yeah, I would echo the last two feedback. So I met my husband when I was done with undergrad, started my first job out of school. And so just that discontinuity in our constant relocations have really, I've really taken a hit with that. And how I've overcome it is just mental strength, honestly. I feel like back in the day, and this is just going to age me, I really had to explain. You know, I did not feel like it was sufficient information for me to say, well, I'm a military spouse. You know, I really wanted to say, this is who I am, without explaining why we've been all over the country and why we've had, you know, cycle of 2 to 3 years. So I think overcoming it with just self-training and mental strength and support with my husband. But by all means, it's been a bit of a whirlwind.
Excellent. Thank you. Vera, I want to give you did somebody else try to speak?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
What exactly is the career path that you were looking for? The reason why I ask is I know on the federal level lately we have incentivized hiring of veterans, but we've completely not even looked at the veterans family issue. And I know that there might be I know that there's some work being done on the VA House Committee on specifically veteran spouses and careers, because when you were speaking, it reminded me about how when we reenacted our affirmative action, we expanded it to include veterans. But as you know, a veteran's not just a veteran's a whole family, the whole clan comes with them. So I'm just wondering, are those career opportunities in government? Do you think that there's ways to incentivize that there, or most of your career opportunities that you or other families want to explore, is that in the private sector? Just trying to see where the emphasis might be able to be put.
So in smaller bases, you're stuck in smaller communities. Well, where, like, I literally walked into Ross and had a temper tantrum in front of the manager and said, hire me. I don't care what you put me in. I could be the stock person for all I care. And she's like, we're not allowed to hire military because you're gone.
She said she wasn't allowed to hire military.
Yeah.
To your, okay.
Well, they're not going to say, like, hey, we don't hire you because you moved. But there's that premise of, you know, that's going to be a super high turnover. Don't hire them. So I literally, she was like, I don't normally do this, but I've had huge turnover rate this year anyway, so whatever. And she put me in the fitting room, and I was their best employee for the whole time I was there.
Wow.
I won Employee of the Month 7 months in a row, and then we transferred. So it took me having a temper tantrum in front of her saying, I don't care what you do, just hire me because I need to get out of my house. When we moved here, Seattle's super versatile. There's big box stores, there's everything. But when you get into the small ones, like even Port Angeles, because Port Angeles is a tiny little base and it's a helicopter base way in the middle of nowhere, the town kind of bunches in and doesn't hire you. So little towns would be better to do, like, the online, or, even opening it up to things that they can do remotely.
I mean, it sounds like there's a long-term, so it feels like with veteran employment, they're just overcoming that bias against hiring veterans because we've incentivized it for the last decade, but it sounds like we've completely left behind the military spouses.
For the active part. So the veteran part is pretty good because they know you're not going to leave. They know that you're retired. They know that you're going to stay. And usually when you retire, that's where you're going to stay. So they don't have a problem hiring veterans because they know that they're not moving. But when you get active and then the spouse is going, they're like, whoa, we don't want to touch you.
And smaller communities know when you're like a military spouse, as opposed to Seattle, where
because
like,
when you walk
there's
into
so
a
many
store,
people, like, they don't know and they don't care, and they can't ask you that either.
Exactly.
Right? So, but in the smaller communities, they know who's a veteran, who's working at the base, and who just came in. And
you have an accent because it's different than theirs. Yeah, small towns give you away like nobody's business.
Right.
Yeah.
But Beverly pointed out before one of the challenges is that her resume shows transitions every couple of years.
Absolutely.
And when an employer reviews a resume, whether or not they say, I'm a military spouse, you then question, gosh, why have they had so much turnover? Have they been a problem employee? And so
And
a
then
lot
when
of
they call,
this,
they can't say, why were they terminated? Why did they leave?
right, and so part of this is about employer education and employer engagement as well, which the military spouse employment empowerment zones is looking to address. But I think that I'm so glad to hear your question,
Yeah.
because I think it's a really foundational question, because these extraordinary patriots are being discriminated against time and time again. And what we hear is that these individuals, so, you know, sharing, Cece met her spouse after undergrad. So here's this individual who's gone through probably, I don't know if she does or not, but many of them have student debt that they're also trying to pay off. And then all of a sudden, they have to start and restart their career every 18 to 36 months. And so what can we do, both from an incentive standpoint, from a statutory basis, as well as from we fundamentally need more talent, and these are exceptionally talented individuals to
just want them to
harness
do a
that.
career. Like that sounds, listening to Cece, it sounds like she's not even able to start a career lately, really.
Sputter.
Even though she's overqualified, and it sounds like you're overqualified for the positions that you're going for. And underemployment is such a big issue just across the board, but it shouldn't have, the last people it should affect is our military families.
Which is funny because we overcome a lot of stuff, which makes us a well-rounded employee, because we have to go through all these hoops, and we know how to multitask because we're doing home, we're doing spouses in the military, we're doing moving, we take care of all this stuff while they're gone. We know how to multitask. You know, it would be like an employer's dream if they could just nail them down.
And it happens in larger communities. Now, my experience was 2005 when we moved to DC. Then I went through about 20-something interviews, and it said, and I was asked, why did you move from Texas to Hawaii to Washington State to now to Washington, DC? And it was, oh, well, you're not going to be here very long. But it turned in, you know, and I tried the whole selling myself. Well, I don't need benefits, which is sort of now, you know, I wouldn't do that. But as a young spouse, it was, hey, don't give me the benefits. I'll take the job.
But that helped.
It did help.
Yeah.
It helped me get employed. But then I don't get, you know, I don't get the benefits of healthcare, which I had TRICARE, and it was, you know, it was great, and I wouldn't, you know, use anything else. But to have to go in to say, I'm not going to take your benefits, so you'll hire me.
The problem with when you retire is because you don't get that. So then now you go in there and you don't have that leverage. You don't have that, well, I don't need vision, I don't need dental because I already have it. Now when you retire, all that goes away and you have to be like, sorry, I need benefits.
I would like to give Vera the opportunity to weigh in. So you are the spouse of a Coast Guard retiree. You also do a lot of workforce development work with both spouses and transitioning service members as well. What's been your experience or observations?
Mark, thank you. Yes, my name is Vera Steiner-Bloor, and I am the spouse of a retired Coast Guard member. And over the course of our married life together, I transitioned my own career 9 times and really reinvented myself because that was the only way to make it happen. You know, one thing that I've noticed in talking with veterans and military spouses over our married life together, it's a very diverse community. We know that. There are spouses, male and female, who have everything from a high school degree to a PhD and everything in between. And there are different restrictions and challenges, I think, that spouses face depending upon what their background is, both professional, both educational, and just their life experience and the frequency of their moves. For those who've been picked up and yanked around every 9 months to 12 months, it really becomes incredibly challenging to find work quickly because by the time you land something, there are orders to relocate again. And one of the things, for me, a couple of things that seemed to work relatively well was to do my homework ahead of time as much as possible. Try and reach into the community as soon as you know that you're relocating to a given area, reach out to folks, whether they're within the service or not. Talk to the local chamber of commerce if there is one. Don't count on somebody placing you. You know, that was my approach, at least, was that I anticipated that I was going to need to network and make as many connections as I could 6 months out, if I had that much notice, to figure out who was doing what in the community, and try and set up some of these informational interview phone calls, if you would, with whether they're employers, whether they're folks at the chamber, to get a sense of what's the environment like there, what are the opportunities, because reaching out like that really can be very helpful. My resume also reflected a change in jobs, but sometimes, because of where I had worked before, it helped to keep the door open for me as I made the next move. I think it's really helpful in overcoming the every 2-year change. I think it's really helpful to highlight up front, both on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile, who are you? You know, you're not putting military spouse in your headline on your LinkedIn profile. Use that front section right underneath the header on the LinkedIn profile to highlight what you bring to the table in a short, succinct way. Because we all know that even when a resume lands on an employer's desk, they may get through the first paragraph and that's it. And so all the other things you did get buried. Well, the LinkedIn profile is the same opportunity for you to highlight, this is who I am, this is the package of skills that I bring to you. And you don't have to highlight military spouse. Wait till the interview for that conversation. So I think that can be a very helpful strategy. But I really do want to applaud Washington State. Having lived around the country, I think the efforts of Alfie and Susie here and the Bay Seattle are phenomenal, because there's a real commitment and effort to pay attention to this issue and recognize that if the spouse is happy, then chances are the active duty member and the family are going to be happy. And not only does it lead to retention, but it minimizes a divorce rate, it supports contributes to the economic development of a community. It's huge. It has a much bigger impact even outside the Coast Guard member's family. So I really want to thank you for making this effort. And the only suggestion I would have in the short run, Washington State has a program called Yes Vets, which has now been extended to, and basically highlighting companies that are very supportive of hiring veterans, and now extended to military spouses as well. It would be wonderful if there were, a listing from Yes Vet companies of openings for spouses as well as veterans, and spouses who are both short-term, who are active duty spouses, as well as spouses who are going to stay in the local area. Because again, Yes Vets exists, but then how do the spouses come and find out what is it that they have available for us? That would be a good shortcut, so that spouses could be informed that if I'm moving to the Seattle area or somewhere in this region, that there's a company who's looking for the following 6 positions to be filled. And oh, by the way, I have those skills. I could fill that job. Here's my application.
So we know that upon coming into a new base, most active duty members get a mandatory orientation. They have to go through a number of steps to be able to go through, what's in the base, what are, how to access certain things, the trainings that are available and all that. Military spouses don't get that. Is there value, what would you suggest when it comes to either as you're leaving a military base and going to another, or coming into a new military base, what would help for either inside of the gate or outside the gate entities to be able to coordinate and be able to be more helpful?
That would be.
So then I'm gonna look to you
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
because what's the best way to connect with the families?
So
Because I don't think it's to the active duty member.
no, it doesn't.
I'm the
go
great example of
anywhere.
that. Horrible
My
example of
husband
that.
was the same
So-
way, so don't feel bad.
Would is the U.S. mail service a good way to connect? Because I'm old, right, and young people probably don't check their mail anymore.
No, because
Right.
it's usually junk
Junk
mail,
mail.
and you just kind of
Right.
miss it. So,
Instagram?
like a month, like
MySpace?
every couple months, have a welcome to the base. Because that was the thing when we moved, even to Astoria and even back here, there was literally no communication. So when we first transferred to wherever it was, and there was like a monthly, hey, welcome to the base kind of thing, and then be like, hey, this is where this is where this is. You know, these are the resources we can help you with. If you have any questions, come over here. So like a monthly, because transfer season in the Coast Guard is
For
not,
spouses.
is not.
Like for families.
Yeah,
Like
for
a-
families. Have like, welcome to the base kind of thing, because Coast Guard doesn't transfer the same time as everybody else does. I mean, it's kind of sporadic.
Coast Guard?
Yeah.
Oh, June, July, and August,
Yeah, but
as opposed to.
Yeah, we did all year round. With our-
Yeah, Army is all year round.
All year round.
There's ebbs and flows, but it's
Yeah.
throughout the year.
So would a virtual one work? Because I have the distance between the bases, like, so I'm the relocation person, and packets go to the service member, but they don't always make it home.
Yeah.
And because that's.
Still have to give you.
Yeah.
If we have stuff on a Saturday, I still have to somehow get that invite to you.
Yeah.
Right? So how do I do that?
Facebook. I belong to every single Coast Guard group page that is possible. I mean, I have other reasons because I do what I do, but I even looked for like groups everywhere, and I'm like, where is this? So even, because we have one for the Pacific Northwest, even hey, this month come in, it's.
Have you done a Facebook Live yet on their Facebook?
No.
Sounds like you're getting scheduled for one.
That's why
We've
I'm
already
here.
been through, like, I'm still on MySpace, so.
GeoCities.
Yeah.
An old dude.
I still search with Gopher.
See, my husband was ITTT, so he was at the new building, and he's like, so you need to go visit this person and this person and this person, and they'll help you out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. So even having that, a monthly thing, a virtual one, you don't get as much because you can't physically see it. There's a lot of people who need to walk into a room and be like, oh, this is where I need to be, or things like that, and then the kids get to see where dad or mom works, and then that brings it a little closer.
Are you all informed of the resources available through what are called across the United States American Job Centers, and here in Washington State, they're called worksource offices?
I am now, but moving before, there was nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
You're in
been
touch
the
with them?
last couple of years, like the last 2-3 years, that everybody's been pushing WorkSource.
Oh,
So
good.
that's what we know.
I'm glad to hear that,
Yeah.
because when I hear about your experience, I also think about how that individual on base could be supported by or supplemented with resources from WorkSource.
Yeah.
And those folks don't just stay at the local offices, but they do travel.
Yeah.
So there are opportunities to do some remote work, and could be a way to buttress that, or to have those individuals help with that. At Joint Base Lewis McChord, we have an on-site WorkSource
Exactly.
office, but in our other bases, it's utilizing entities from other nearby WorkSource offices. So that could be a way to help
Well,
supplement.
that's what
Yes.
Heather does.
So I have WorkSource come in and brief during my transition courses, and spouses are always invited when I send them, send the information out.
Yeah.
I ask spouses, and my go-to line is usually, as a spouse, I went in and briefed as an employee for 5 minutes. Oh, this is what you can do. Then when my husband retired, I sat with him through the transition course, and I was like, oh my goodness.
The tax class.
Yes, spouses need to attend that.
Yes, absolutely.
And you can attend it any time in the career. It is not only for transition, it is for at any point in your career. And during that time, I give classes on career development, on building a resume and stuff. So that's out there, but again, it's going through the service member to get that information out.
Yeah.
I don't have a Facebook page that I send that information to. It goes to the ombudsman each time. But if you're not connected with that, and not all spouses, and even in the larger, coming from the Army, as an Army spouse, we didn't, a lot of spouses don't get the information. It's overcoming that hurdle to get the information to the spouses.
Social media's come so far within
Yes.
the last couple of years though, so it's a whole lot easier to find, hey, this is happening, this is happening.
So it's important for spouses to have a LinkedIn profile because it's something that is important. There are classes that take place that are free to spouses to be able to do that because that follows you all over the place. But then signing up with American Job Centers because the profile is pretty much national, isn't it?
We hand each other off. We hand people off between them.
You hand off, so you don't have to do it every time you go somewhere to do a job, American Job Centers profile. So you do things once and then you just refresh and refresh to make sure that employers looking for good employees will see those profiles and actually they make their calls sometimes. Yeah.
I want to go back to Vera, your point on Yes Vets, and it's great your awareness of that. One of the big questions that I have related to Yes Vets is it's not Yes Spouses. And as you pointed out before, Janet, hiring a veteran is a very different proposition for an employer than hiring a spouse.
Absolutely.
And so one of the big questions, we did not actually put it into the executive order. And part of that was because we wanted to ask the question of could and should these things be conjoined or should they be distinct and discrete? And so my question to the spouses and to you especially is, and also to Christine Moreland, who's on the phone from the Society for Human Resources Management from SHRM, who is our partner in Yes Vets, is should we expand it so that it has this dual purpose? Should there be separate programs? And how do we not just provide employers with a decal saying they do this, but equip them with the tools so that they can do it better? So I'd love some thoughts or feedback on that.
I think putting it together would be better, because then they wouldn't have to do two separate programs. It could literally just be one, so it would be less. So the more you add to it, the more they don't want to do it, because then there's that extra step. So if you have them together, then plus also with the moving around for the active duty, the spouses get the, oh, you're going to move. The problem is when they retire, a lot of them have PTSD. A lot of them can't work. A lot of them have been, disabled. That's what we deal with Q missions is our veterans have PTSD. We take them to third world countries to retrain how they think. So when they come back, a lot of them can't work. So that leaves their spouse. They still get discriminated because even though they're still not in it, their spouse can't work. And then they have to go out and work. And then they see, oh, you moved every 4 months. Then they will, well, we're retired. But you still have that stigma of every 4 years you're going to move.
Yeah.
So that's the hard thing that we're running into is the spouses are coming to us saying, we can't find a job because they want to hire a veteran, but my veteran can't work.
And on the phone regarding this program that is for veterans and that we're sort of toying with the idea of doing something separate. What is your feedback on that? CC or
Beverly?
Yeah, Beverly.
CC, do you want to weigh in on that?
In regards to the question of, yeah, I would say I would keep it separate. I think this hits very close to home to my family and I right now because my husband is entertaining the idea of transitioning out. And so in that regard, where I am today, I think it should be separated. There are two different paths. So that's just my feedback on that.
I'd love to hear, Christine, what do you think as somebody who is an HR professional in this space?
Christine, you may need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead, Christine.
Did you say, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. And we've been talking about it as far as with the Washington State SHRM, and some of the issues that just as HR professionals or HR managers we're aware of with our own employers. And I think if we rolled it in together, the issue is the employers still aren't educated enough to understand that they're two separate. They understand veterans, they understand what their value is to some extent and what the transitional skills are that they have. But I don't think they're as familiar with the spouses or even have thought about spouses that can come and work or that can work remotely. And so I almost
Sorry, we might have lost you, Christine. There, you're back. Go ahead, Christine.
One of the,
Can you not?
Now we hear you.
Can you not hear me?
You left off at I almost. We were waiting with bated breath.
I believe that I'm in agreement in that we almost should think about having them separated, or if we roll them together, we're really going to have to be doing a lot of educating for the employers because there's still a lot of them are hesitant. The hiring managers are still unaware of how the skills that the veterans bring those are transferable skills, and we can really use them, and we can show them how they do fit into the company, but their focus so far hasn't, I don't think, been on spouses. And so we really have to do a lot of educating to let them know the difference between the two. Right now, I still argue with a lot of my hiring managers at my company to say, we have some remote positions. It doesn't matter if some of these candidates have a lot of gaps because we don't know what those gaps are, and we ought to interview them and find out and give them the opportunity to share with us and see if they are a good fit for some of our positions. So I think a lot of the HR professionals, my colleagues that we've been talking, we believe maybe they should be separated.
Mark, I wanted to jump on that real quick too. So something you do have to be careful of when you're looking at these. I think, in my opinion, I think there has to be some level of separation, and for the fact that if you bring them together, and then let's say we use Yes Vets for example, if we recognize an organization that's hiring veterans, but if we bring them together to include the spouse, that may get lost in the translation because of the incentives that the employers have, where they get that sticker out there and they're Yes Vet, Yes Vet, Yes Vet, but the actual message of the issue that we're trying to tackle with the spouses, they may not be in hiring any spouses because of the incentives that are out there, but still getting that kind of, that credit for being a Yes Vet member. Meanwhile, we're losing the message about the challenges that the military spouses are having. So I think something to consider is, it does seem, logical that it would be good together, but I think there's got to be some level of degree of separation, or we're going to lose the message of what the real issue is on the military spouses employment side.
It's definitely worth an ad campaign. If I may make a suggestion to you, something that's really worked in terms of job listservs or things that I've seen in other offices, other congressional offices that have helped with communication has been Slack. It's this messaging tool, this office managing messaging tool. It's free, and basically you have different channels, and you can just throw up jobs there. You have to be invited into the channels, and people leave it based on their employment. Like if somebody leaves our office, they leave our Slack channel, right, and whatnot. But it's done privately, and that's one way that I could think of connecting with folks as well. But I also think, just in general, I mean, we've done such an amazing ad campaign on Veterans Life ever since, OIF started. But we haven't done that at all for veterans families. I don't think not since World War II have we really seen an emphasis put on like veteran military spouses. I bet you, I mean, that's going way back, way before MySpace, but, just thinking about that, it's
Before your time.
but thank God for them. But you know, I think I think a lot of it's just simple awareness as well. Because before I started my position here, like my aunt is Air Force, and my uncle would go with her from place to place to place to place. But you never really thought of him at all when he was going from place to place. But I mean, it would be worth just seeing an ad or something. You never hear about it on Veterans Day or 4th of July or Memorial Day. So I just think it's just not even in our consciousness too.
You know, it's interesting the remark you just made, because at many of the career fairs, so now Hiring Our Heroes has opened up its career fairs to spouses as well. But I think that one of the challenges is that the career fairs are primarily targeting veterans who are ready to commit full-time to employment. And the spouse community, when we talk about military spouses, and in Washington State, my understanding is that the definition is quite inclusive.
Yes.
So it is not just talking about active duty spouses, but also former, spouses who were previously married to a military member, spouses of retired members. That's where I think the challenge comes in terms of whether it's through the Yes Vet companies or any company that says we support military families, because there is a difference between an employer who's willing to hire the spouse of a veteran versus the spouse of an active duty member who is, continuing to move.
Absolutely.
And when you have a company like Amazon, as was mentioned earlier, that has now come up with a wonderful program of teaching coding to military spouses so that these are very portable skills that can readily be taken around the country, around the world, that's wonderful. Or even a hospitality industry like Hilton, where they're training you to be doing a lot of work over the phone. That's wonderful for spouses who are still on the move. There are, of course, many other spouses who are teaching or nurses or what have you who need to get relicensed every time they relocate. And for them, that kind of portability is a whole different ball of wax, that they wouldn't be looking for those particular positions. But I think that's why it's really important for when we understand what's an employer's disposition towards hiring military spouses, that we understand and that they understand this is a broad group. Some of these spouses are looking for, jobs that are portable, and they may be off-site when they're working for you. And some of these are spouses of veterans who are now able to stay put for a period of time. And I certainly defer to the expert on employment security here in the room. But one of the things I've also found in talking with veterans and other employers is that a lot of people don't stay in jobs for 25 years anymore once you leave the service. And so this concern in previous years of every 2 or 3 years somebody changing jobs is no longer as taboo as it used to be, and it's not an instant alarm for every company like it would have been in years past when you kind of were expected to be at a firm for 10 years or longer. And frankly, that's a jolt for veterans as well, because sometimes when they get out, they think, oh, I'm going to land a job and I'm going to be there for another 20 years now.
Yeah.
And they're shocked when 18 months later they may be someplace else. That can happen, not always, but.
Please.
The jolt for employers, though, I think a lot with military spouses is you're going to be a single parent. And that's, because when your spouse is deployed, you're the only one the school can call. You're the only one that can be home when the children are sick. And so that's like an ad campaign, because we've kind of, we're really tackling the issues through ad campaigns and stuff like that of hiring veterans, but not of hiring spouses. And that's what, as a spouse, that's what I heard a lot, that they can't legally say in interviews, but, the assumption is you have children. And you're going to be the person that's responsible for those children when your spouse is, out underway and stuff.
I actually got that line when I went for a management position of a store, and they said, you can't do it because your husband's in the military, and if he is deployed, you were the only one there, and you have children. So I was turned down for a management position because my husband is in the military.
So here's one of the things, I can't help myself. Because it's a system, right? Like, it's not like whack-a-mole where you can hit this one and then this other thing pops up. So one of the things that we recognize, and I think that we need to systemically address, so when somebody comes, they may be here for 2 years, but if you don't start your job search until you arrive here, then you're 3 to 6 months in before you even get an opportunity.
Exactly.
So I think your point on how to better equip people with connecting up with local chambers or the work source offices is a muscle that both we need to build, but that we also need the Department of Defense to help with as well.
And Homeland Security.
And Homeland Security. And you talked about PII, personally identifiable information, and one of the challenges is reaching those individuals when there is a transfer assigned, and how to help them navigate that before they ever move. The other thing that I'll point out is with regards to leave. So Washington State's new paid family medical leave law, our benefits go online January 1st. And we are the first state in the nation to include in that military leave. So if your spouse is notified of short deployment, if they're home on R&R, if you need to take care of them because they're injured during their active duty service, if they have a military ceremony, that counts as a leave event. You can take paid family medical leave for that from a non-federal employer. And that employer can also apply for a small business grant if it's a small business that's under 150 employees, and get anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 for backfilling or temporary support or training that might be needed to backfill for that. So it's a whole system and thinking about that. Again, we haven't launched the benefit side of this, so businesses wouldn't be like, well, gosh, I should be doing this right now. They're not there yet, and we will need to build up that muscle, but I think that it's recognizing all of the different factors and how, again, a lot of this comes back to the employers. And I know that as an employer, we have 1,700 people across almost 50 different locations in Washington State with the Employment Security Department. I look at this incredible talent pool and I think, holy moly, how do we hire more military spouses? We're actually gonna, hopefully, we're putting together a proposal right now, create a call center that is military spouses and that focuses on individuals who have 24 or fewer months in Washington State and has a short ramp up, quick training, and we have them while we have them, and we love them while we can love them. And then we know that they may go on, but they're gonna have a great piece of their resume and they're gonna have some great skills to move into their next location. So I want more employers to do that, and we also see in the private sector here folks like Amazon and Microsoft who are investing that way, but we need more, so. Couldn't help myself.
No, yeah. And the reason I partnered those two together with having the veteran, or having the spouses with the veterans, is only because most employers know, hire a hero, hire a vet. You introduce something like hire a spouse, and they'll be like, what? Because they already know that hire a vet thing. So it's not, you could even maybe start out with that and then like branch off to it, but they already know the hire a vet kind of thing. So that's
It's a conversation to be had. There have been no decisions made.
Yeah.
This is input, this is listening, and we'll need to talk to employers as well, people who are in our Yes Vets program, and listen first.
That's just huge. Like, in the federal government, there's a lot of lessons we can be taking from what the state's doing, especially often what you folks are doing. And I think a lot of it is just having the conversation. We haven't talked about it nearly enough on the federal level.
Absolutely.
I think we've been pretty myopic of just focusing on the active duty member or the veteran themselves. And right now we're trying to figure out caretaking, different parts that are really a whole part, looking at a veteran holistically. And I think a lot of at least what we see, at least what the congressman would see, is just seeing how Washington State is continuing to have this conversation, is relentless about it, especially with our employers. And we need to be doing that on the national level, because there are communities that love their military bases, love their military families, but do many of the same things you say. And we live in 2019. It's not like 1960 where you can do that sort of lifestyle. You just have so much more that you're capable of that you should be able to take advantage of, and that we need as well as a community at large. So I just hearing her talk about it, it's like, oh man, we need to hit this home a lot more on the federal level. So just kudos to the state.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to jump on that too. So just recently retiring, I just recently retired out of the Army, and so during my transition and after, I stayed connected with veterans and transition service members. One of the things that we need to do on the DoD or the Homeland Security level too is to help change the culture within the organizations. By what I mean by that is as service members are transitioning out of the military, there's that friction of, hey, I can't let you go because of our readiness ratings and so on and so forth. So you see a lot of times where you have people that are transitioning out of the military and they're not able to go and do some of the things that are out there, some internships, some different things, these programs that are out there. And I think if we can tackle some of that, you know, and get past, hey, the stigma of what we're dealing with the person that's going to be the veteran, I mean, we're never going to get to the military spouse thing. So I think those two things are coupled because, you know, as people are transitioning out of the military, there's that constant tug, I can't let you go because we got this upcoming deployment or whatever it may be, you know, and I think that's going to be a barrier. If we can get that barrier broke down, then I think the floodgates could open up to the military house. And that's just, you know, seeing that from firsthand experience. So.
And we have Alfie's actually joining us, even though she couldn't join us on person, she's still watching. And she asked a question for you, Mike, is what's a way that your organization can focus on military spouses and or assist and focus, let me rephrase that. How can your organization focus on military spouses?
Well, one of the things, what I don't know enough about is, particularly in the Coast Guard area, is the spousal eligibility for educational benefits, right? So if there is an issue with, while I'm someplace, maybe I could do some coursework for ongoing career development planning, is at least, you know, here we you know, have the ability to help think through those things and also possibly fund it through the state's financial aid programs, because we do have financial aid programs actually on the civilian side, right? Washington state financial aid programs are far more generous than the federal government's U.S. Department of Education's benefits, and they're getting even more generous in July, right? And they cover all sorts. They're not limited to traditional college pathways. They cover all sorts of programs across every kind of, you know, not all institutions, particularly whatever, but certainly all the main, you know, the public ones, the private ones you'd be familiar with, but including community college, short-term programs, and things of that sort. And we may be extending that by some rulemaking next year to cover shorter-term programs, which again, because you have to sort of fit this into this 2-year cycle, right? You know, or figure out a way to navigate the path moving across states and accumulating some credits here and some credits there. And there are pathways to do that, and there are different ways to accomplish that, and that's would be part of it. It would also extend to other family, you know, to children, you know, other dependents, you know, in the household. I don't know if this issue of how to tackle some of the remote stuff is a cross-agency combination issue, because that's one of the things. Like just yesterday, we were looking at the specifics of, you know, where do we find jobs that we were crunching the data later in other data sets to look at finding jobs, quote, in your backyard that pay well, that you can access with a educational program under a year, right? Okay. Now what? That's challenging. What you find is there are areas geographically, there are areas of the state where that is very, and the country obviously, right? There are areas of the state where there's a whole bunch of these opportunities, there's a whole bunch of programs and all that kind of, and that's early. And then we're getting to areas of the state that would be like, you were in Warrenton, Oregon,
yeah,
and therefore near Astoria, yeah, and that would be probably a lot better off than some of the specific counties I looked at yesterday in Washington as far as the number of these jobs. But that's, you know, that's also part of it, and then it also spills over into the notion of like how I don't think anyone's ever thought about this. How do we build career paths around good paying remote jobs? And I also think it's an area that most people, having once years past as somebody just done it personally on others, I think there's a lot of good remote work out there. It's not easily accessed by people who are not already in the networks of people who do that kind of work, right? And some of that may require, focus on education or training before being able to get the good jobs. At the same time, I think there's a lot of predatory, intermediaries who want to promote. We can get you a remote job. You can make $1,000 a week at home by whatever company. I don't think any state in the country anywhere's ever really thought through that. How do you consciously work to solve the problem that you would encounter in a place like Warrenton and Astoria or
Nia Bay.
What?
Nia Bay.
Nia Bay. I was going to go. Yeah, Nia
Astoria is
Bay.
one of our larger populations.
I was going to go off the coast, ask Soton or Penderay or Penderay or
But the community is not.
And part of that also is overcoming. Obviously, we have what we call town gown tensions in higher ed, where the people in the community, where the colleges may not be always, not all of them, the biggest fans. Right.
Yes.
Okay. And you're going to run into the same sort of thing where it's like, we want those jobs for us.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't many jobs in Warrenton, so we don't want you, Coast Guard, everybody, people who come and go, and you get it. We want those jobs for us. And so, no matter what, and you work at Ross.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ross is probably going to have a natural corporate posture that is neutral on it. It's not at all reinforcing what you're told. That's a local, homegrown employer hiring a decision maker, bias that not all of them would have probably, but some do accumulate that. And the person in the office has that, the same kind of bias. So therefore, the defense mechanism of that actually recognizing that's a tough thing to wear down. Even you got to educate on it, maybe make people feel guilty about that. But opening up the other possibilities for remote work. Because there's going to be places where there is just, and this is not just, spouses and Coast Guard. There's so many parts of the country where the jobs, these are just disappearing.
Yeah.
Or they weren't there, have already gone, right? So.
If you like companies who, hey, we'll pay for your college if you work for us for a year kind of deal. So
Right.
I wonder if there's any way you could tie that in. If you start here, you could do your courses online. Even if you move, you can still work for that company in Washington, like by computer.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably figuring out where the developing pathways, like with reference to Amazon, the AWS Educate program, and other companies have their variations on this, and how do you use those as sort of like a launch pad into these kinds of things, because the jobs are not only with them, the jobs are frequently with their customer environment, right? And maybe there's, I'm not an expert on the remote opportunities.
I'm just giving you ideas.
Yeah, exactly. But that's like that's us thinking through organically what the environment looks like for these, in other words, it's not all gonna happen in a week or two of a job search. In other words, you gotta figure, okay, I need to get here, I need to do a couple things to get there. Can we do it in such a way that it doesn't make any difference in the middle of that pathway, you get moved from here to London, Connecticut, pick a place that I know, whatever, and how do I keep that going? And then once I'm remote, then I've kind of graduated out of the geo trap, so to speak, right?
Yeah. I'm just thinking that there's like a clause of military spouse.
Well, one of the things that this current federal administration did is military spouses are now a protected class for hiring into the federal administration.
Oh, nice.
So, for example, our local Veterans Administration leader, Pritz, he has to prioritize hiring military spouses. So, an interesting question is, do we actually make that the case along with veterans like we do? Just putting that question out there. Or do the states look at this as a way to have military spouses be a priority class? Just putting it out there as something to...
I've forgotten, but having been an employer during the wave of huge call-up for Iraq, right, and dealing with people in the National Guard, that there was a wave of education about both your legal obligations, but also your, moral, civic, and patriotic obligations. And I even think it might have extended to the notion that you're going to have in your employees, you're going to have both the spouse who suddenly becomes the single parent in a call-up family, as well as the employee who gets called up. And I don't know if any of that is, if that was actually done, or I'm just remembering a warm and fuzzy particular environment I was in, and whether that's a model to actually how to build an education campaign around. Because for the spouses, it's not a peak call-up period issue. It's a forever issue, right?
So if I understood the question, is it awareness around the new federal guidelines on hiring hiring military folks? Is it just awareness, or is it how do we implement the policy?
So the policy came out through an executive order, is my understanding, and it's for hiring at the federal level. It is not a federal law with regards to military spouses.
I mean, what I would say,
and so it's just something. It's something to look at and to consider. Both, I think that there is awareness versus value proposition, and I think that we've talked about a lot of this today around what is the value proposition for hiring military spouses versus what is the patriotic obligation for hiring military spouses, and how do we overcome any reticence from employers? And it just may not work for all employers, but how do we also help them overcome that reticence and understand that value proposition? And or how do we create new networks for folks to develop their careers and not just jobs? And from an education standpoint, something that hasn't come up that I'd like to ask a question about that has come up at the other two really prominently is around licensure and credentials. And so I wanted to ask either Cece, if you're still online, or Janet, or Vera, from your experience, or you as the spouse of a teacher, or Jason from your spouse, what has been your experience, and what could we here in Washington State, and Heather, from your experience, what could and should we be thinking about and doing better on this front? And then we also are blessed to have federal legislative representatives here. What could and should be considered on a federal basis for this too?
This is Stacey. I can't speak to credentials, but so I just want to let you know I'm still here.
Awesome. Thank you, Cece.
So I have a few things, because I get to hear about this almost every night, whether I want to hear about it or not. Is I know some of the so my wife's a teacher. She got her credential in California, and she's a middle school teacher, and so their endorsements that she had to get down there taking additional tests and all that kind of stuff. She has a master's. She has 2 masters, one in education administration, another one in business, and so Washington State and California have a comedy agreement in place that the credential will transfer. Same with Virginia. So those 3, I know those 3 are connected. But she's currently teaching elementary because she can't get the endorsement. For some reason, her California State credential for middle school doesn't transfer to Washington, so she's teaching elementary even though her specialty is middle school, which is a little strange. She's teaching 5th grade, so close enough. So there are challenges, and I know there's the national certification for teachers, and I know they have the same thing for nursing. They have the national certifications, which is a whole nother like master's level kind of thing that they have to get, which I think is kind of the solution everyone says to military spouses. Why don't you just get the national certification? All right, so we got 3 kids at home. I'm working long hours. She's taking classes to get her other master's. Now she's supposed to get her national credential, but you need experience for that. And she's currently in a pause because we're moving around the country. And, we haven't talked about what spouses go through during the 6 months before you move emotionally, right? Yeah. Like your whole world collapses and you're all right, I got to buckle down and move. I'm going to lose all my friends again. I have to get my kids and all the stuff again. By the way, my husband, I'm talking from my wife's perspective. I know it's flipped around with the wife's active duty, but my husband's got a whole network of friends and colleagues when he walks in the door. And I'm going to be stuck at home with these 3 kids that are crying, and right. Yeah. So it's a major emotional event for spouses as well, as they go through this, and then to tack onto that, hey, I can't get a hold of the state. So Washington State puts military spouses at the head of the line for credentialing, which is great. Yeah. But still, a lot of times people don't know, and you have to read them the law and what's in their kind of. And so it's a big challenge, right? We get through it. Our spouses are resilient. They're great people, but it's a challenge. It's not easy, and it's just one more thing that you're adding on that thing. So when we moved to Ohio, my wife said, I ain't working. And she didn't work for 3 years.
I
So-
think it's the military, like, doing at a federal level, looking at the Military Child Compact, where, like, when we moved here, and my son didn't have to take a Washington State history, honoring that and doing a military spouse compact, and having those credentials honored, at least for a year until you get credentialed there, and then every effort made through grants and stuff like that. But I think that's a federal response, is having a military spouse compact, much like you have the military child compact.
It comes down to the different career types. It seems, at least, so I know the casework, but also do the outreach and some of the policy stuff. If you're an officer in the military, your skills, because you probably come in with an education, your skills are so much more translatable to the civilian side. And the folks that really get the shaft are really our enlisted members. There's two different classes that I really deal with, and usually the majority of my social work is with enlisted members. And there are so many folks that, you know, they were driving trucks on a large aircraft base. If they can do that, they can certainly drive a truck from Canada all the way down to LA and they'll be fine. This is somebody who's overqualified. I think it goes back to the initial question that you had brought up about, you know, the fact that we have federal guidelines for military spouses and veterans and military folks. I think a lot of it is just lack of awareness on the civilian side for us, lack of education, and just really a lack of that patriotic sense. I think we forget that we've been at war for 17 years. I'm sending kids to West Point whose dads served in Iraq and Afghanistan. This is a multi-generational conflict that we just have not, this is much more embedded deeper than even Vietnam was, probably, because it's changed the entire machinery. But, you know, I think sometimes folks don't even know that there's a war going on, especially on the civilian side. Days go on where I think 3% of our civilian population especially serves in the military or has some sort of military service. Here in Washington State, we have an outsized version of that. But I think all those questions are sort of embedded in not only awareness, but accountability. You know, in the federal government, that's why I asked about career paths, at least in rural communities, is at least in the federal, county, and local governments, we could be doing a better job of the federal government communicating, you know, why this is important, continuing to have those conversations, especially in Congress. I know that agencies are having those conversations, but I think that in Congress we have a platform to bring it up, and especially with a lot of the new members that have been elected who are military themselves or military spouses. Hopefully that keeps pushing that forward. But it's all wrapped up into one, and even when I tell people in my family that we've been at war for 17 years, they look at me pretty surprised, because people just don't think about it. I don't think they really understand that. I just don't think it's as much of a consciousness, and I think that's probably more of a statement on our civilian population than anything about what's going on.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on when they go from driving a truck to back and forth. The problem, like when my husband retired, they don't have a clue. Like, they've been structure. This is what this person said, this is what you follow. You get into the real world, my husband's like, I'm gonna go work at Home Depot. And I was like, you're gonna work retail? He's like, yeah, I can totally do it. And I'm like, okay. So he gets there, and then totally different. He's like, they don't listen. I'm like, no, they don't listen. They're a bunch of teenagers. And he goes, they don't follow directions. I'm like, no, they don't follow directions. Just because you're older and you were so high, they're not gonna listen to you. You know, you just started there. You have to be a manager of the store for them to kind of listen to you. And he's like, I just don't understand. So that stigma too of, oh, you're in the military, come work for me. Oh, this is how it is, and they're not following directions. That's a lot of problems vets are having too, is because there's structure, but there's not structure. So, you know, it took him a long time to realize that people don't always follow the rules. So in theory that would work, taking somebody who drove a truck and then just letting him go and drive a truck. But it's the same way with spouses. Oh, well, you're just a spouse. I don't know how many times I've been called a dependopotamus, and I'm like, do you not understand what we do? They're like, oh, you're your husband's rank. That I have been told several times. You're a spouse, you're not your husband's rank. Yeah, but who do you think got his butt in gear for 6 months before, we moved? Who set up the house 6 months after we got all of our boxes into this little tiny house? Who put the kids on the bus? Who picked the kids up from school? Who got a job because, we had 3 kids. Not once have I ever pulled my husband rank. That's just not who I am. But to automatically be categorized by that, by people you don't know, and, even, going into another job and they're like, oh, you're a military spouse. Yes, I am. I work my butt off, thank you. So, if we come up with that too. And I don't think, I know the service members kind of, hear that. And being a spouse, I'm sure people had judged you depending on your spouse's rank. But I had never thought of it that way. I literally went out there and just worked and worked and worked and worked. And if you're that kind of person, I don't kind of want to be by you because I know my worth. So that's another hurdle that they run into. Granted, there are those wives who, wear their husband's rank, but 99% of them just want to get out, just want to work, just want to do something, be productive.
This is amazing. This is incredible input. I want to do something that we haven't done at the previous sessions. I'd like to ask everybody who's on the phone and everybody who's in the room to take a moment to reflect on what we've all heard and shared today, and to share one thing that you might do, plan to, or want to do differently as a result of what this conversation was and what we heard today.
Why don't we start with the folks who are online? So if anybody who is online wants to weigh in, you'll probably need to unmute yourself.
This is Mike Markham.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Mark. So I see a lot of parallels with Tim Lovett's best practices in the classroom document that he created back in, 2010 with the spouses. I hear some recurring themes, and I'm wondering if we can't put together some type of an educational document that points out some of these things for employers, as well as maybe having a landing place for spouses and some incentives for employers documented there. So a little bit of education, a little bit of incentive, a little bit of, shaming might actually be helpful too. And it can also help the spouses with regard to what's been spoken about already in how we market ourselves to employers.
For your information, Alfie and I are going to work with our teams to publish the output from these conversations and kind of coalesce it. And so I think that would complement that really, really nicely as a component within that. So thank you.
And if I may, Susan, jump on there, kind of what we do with the SVETs, where we have the 10 things or 10 reasons to hire a veteran, maybe putting a simplified document such as that, top 10 reasons to hire a spouse or something to highlight not just their marriage, but the reasons on why to hire a spouse and some of the resiliency that you go through, I think would be something we'd be definitely interested in as part of WDVA and our partnership with ESD and SVETs.
Does anybody else online want to weigh in with their thoughts?
We did have an online.
This is Christine Moreland.
Go ahead.
I know one of the things, I think it was Susie mentioned the priorities that they have for the vets on the federal side, but I know in the state of Washington, there was a law that was put in place to give private employers can give veterans priority when we're doing our recruiting and selection. And that's something that we could possibly look into as a human resource management. Is that something we could pull together and put out there maybe as a suggestion to do for military spouses as well, for the civilian, the private employers?
Awesome. Thanks, Christine.
Anybody else online want to weigh in?
I know we received a suggestion here suggesting.
Hello, this is Laura. I think one of the things I would like to share that I want to... Go ahead.
Go ahead, Flora.
Yeah, one of the things I think I want to do a little different as I'm listening is whenever we were thinking about creating a training or emphasizing the importance of training for our state agencies, we were thinking about combining the veteran and the military spouse together. But I think at this point it is in the best interest to make the distinction, to recommend training that's separate. It makes that clear guideline that this is how you address the barriers for the veteran community, and this is different. How do you deal with the military spouse? So I think that it is important to make that distinction. We have been using the SHRM recommendation certification to do that, and I don't know how much we can influence to have a request to have a separate type of certificate for the military spouse, so that way we can encourage our state agencies to have both of them, the veteran certification as well as the military spouse certification.
Christine, did you hear that?
I did. And I'm also the Washington State Inclusion Captain for the National SHRM Foundation. They're the ones that partnered with Comcast, NBC Universal, and some of the other sponsors that we have to come up with that Veterans at Work certification. That's free to anybody and everybody, especially recruiters and hiring managers. In my next conference call, I can certainly share with the group, is this something that they might want to look into, and just highlight those different challenges and barriers that military spouses have versus the veterans. I'm certainly open to sharing that with them.
Outstanding. Sounds like you have a partner in Flora too.
All right.
We do have a Facebook suggestion. Sounds like it would be ideal to host a federal meets state leadership symposium. The idea of a countrywide credentialing could be best served in a quorum like that. Something along the lines of U.S. Military and Family Symposium. It's just a thought.
Because Washington has taken that huge step to try and tie everybody into it. Yeah, we applaud you for that.
Thank you. It's something I'll take as an action item to follow up with the folks from Hiring Our Heroes, and the folks also working in the MSEZ program, the Military Spouse Employment Empowerment Zone folks. So I'll follow up on that in terms of federal meets states. And I would love to engage you on this as well, and you on this. So Senator Cantwell's office, Senator Jayapal's office, as well as Senator Newhouse's office. If John is still, hopefully John is still on. Not Representative Newhouse. Sorry about that.
All right. Let's look to the folks in the room. Susie asked the question. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Mary. I just wanted to make the comment, or what was really resonating with me was the fact that what are those big companies or small companies that really have the virtual workplace down and are looking for employees that could have a career from their kitchen or from their their wherever they are, they're mobile. And I guess, every time we have a job fair, you always, to me, I only see those employers that are, for the most part, wanting someone to come and work with their hands and mind and be there. So I guess to me, it's just like, how do we find those flex jobs and maybe highlight them in some of our upcoming job fairs or career days or information sessions, so that we all start thinking about those type of companies that have careers where you literally can work from your home. And do amazing things. So that was my thought, that I hadn't really put much effort into that, and I think that would be a value for our group, our transition council, to understand that better.
I love
Susie,
that
you probably know all about it.
Well, the
Certainly
idea
don't.
of not just a virtual job fair, but a virtual jobs job fair is a really interesting one. And we can look at and talk to the National Association of State Workforce Agencies. Have others done this elsewhere? Is something we can learn from? I'm a big fan of don't reinvent the wheel. But if we have to innovate and drive that forward ourselves, fabulous. And Jason, I'm seeing you taking a note on that right now. So
I know Sandmar is a company who does that, because I have military friends who work from home.
there are many, and they're not just located in Washington State. There are many across the United States, and so there's a lot of there.
But I mean, you could poke into them and say,
Yeah.
hey, how are you doing this, and how can we help, kind of deal.
I've got maybe something a little different, and just maybe something that can help as far as communication standpoint to spread and disseminate information better. As military spouses and or just anyone in the room or online, what are some of, I know you mentioned social media earlier, what are some other ways as traveling to a new location or a new base installation that you kind of go out as a spouse to find, whether it be family resources, whether it be maybe particular employment opportunities? I guess, do you have any guidance or suggestions on sharing with our audience of just tips and ways that you've, as a spouse, have kind of navigated through? Because we know sometimes it can seem maybe in a rural situation that you can't find any of them, versus down I-5 corridor where there's 632 of them. So do you have any tips or guidance for that?
Mine was MySpace era too. I moved to Astoria, so there was no really way to put it out there. But when we moved back to Seattle, it was Facebook. I was like, we knew we were moving to back here, and so I was like, Facebook. Okay, so what groups are in that area? So I don't even. We can try. This is what I'm excited about. I want to work with you to get everybody together. Like, because when we moved back here, because most of his career was in Seattle, but when we moved back here, it was like nobody said anything. Like, there was no communication, nothing like that. Even on Facebook groups, there was nothing. So I didn't find anything. So I want to sit with you and maybe make a page, Coast Guard Seattle family page or something like that, where we could get together and put lists of resources and stuff like that on it too.
Awesome.
And potentially would love to maybe share the list of Facebook pages that you're using in the community already to kind of find information, and maybe we can kind of share that with our group as well too, and make sure that we're tracking as far as social media admins and professionals, so that we're knowing what's going on in the community and sharing that across our channels as well.
I would say that certainly social media is a very powerful tool if it's used properly, but also just personal connections and networking. I think this whole networking concept only gets thrust at people as a formal term during TAP and ETAP classes. People don't really have a sense of, well, what does networking really mean? It might mean that you knew Sally was living in Astoria or Warrenton. It might mean an email or a text to Sally saying, hey Sally, long time no speak. Turns out we're being relocated to Astoria. Do you know anybody there I might talk with? I'm looking to do any kind of work, or I'm looking to do some writing, or I'm really interested in the museums there, or whatever it is. But it's that outreach ahead of time and using both social media and just people that you know to say, I'm headed in that direction. What can you tell me? Introduce me to somebody. I mean, when I was coming back to the Pacific Northwest after having been on the East Coast for 7 or 8 years, instantly, the minute I knew I was coming back, I started to reach out to anybody who knew anybody in the region. And that built that, oh, you should talk to so-and-so, and you should go and meet so-and-so, and have coffee with I had a lot of coffee, as somebody told me, buy a big Starbucks card or whatever other coffee you drink, and be ready to take people out to coffee and just say, tell me about what you're doing.
You know, where are the opportunities? How might I go in this direction? Whatever the kind of work is that you're looking to do. But don't hesitate to do that for people. And then in return, don't hesitate to be that resource for others who are then coming here later. Because, right, it's networking is a two-way street. It's not just what can you do for me, but how can I support you down the road as well? And I think once that, you know, people start to think about that and think about social media and think about people that they've worked with or been friends with before who've been in their shoes, talk to them. There's nothing weird about you reaching out. Just talk to them, and you don't know what kind of doors might open for you after that.
And really what you're talking about is life skill development, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because those are life skills.
They are.
Sometimes it takes us 20-something years to figure that stuff out.
Yeah.
I'll take care of it on my own.
Right.
And people are happy to help you
help.
and mentor, and like people have time. They love that stuff.
Nonprofits.
Love helping people.
Nonprofits
For
are
just people.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
We have so many resources and people don't know. And I reach out. Yeah, we reach out
So-
to as many people as we can. We're like, hey, come to us. You know, this is what we can offer.
So and the challenge is like, you know, what's Amazon's biggest delivery challenge, right? It's the last 20 feet.
Yeah.
That's their biggest delivery challenge in the next 20 years. It's how do they get from, so our challenge is sitting in all these meetings. I know you guys are working on great stuff. Like, there's so many resources out there. How do I get it to you? You know, how do I get it to you? And so that's a challenge, right? You know, with when you have access to all the information you could ever want, how do I get what I want to tell you and what you need? How do I get that delivered to you?
We need to be friends because I'm annoying on Facebook. I message everybody I know. If there's something I want you to know, you will know it or your friends will know
So
it.
I'm a
and
voyeur
yeah.
on Facebook.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's my challenge.
Yeah.
Like I get that. What's the last 20 feet? How do I get that information so it's accessible? It's when somebody needs it, and I mean that's a challenge of our time.
I'd love to, so I want to be very respectful of people's time, and we have just a few more minutes. So let's do a little speed round. Again, what is it that you will do differently, want to do as a result of this conversation?
I go out to the different Coast Guard stations pretty frequently, about 7 to 8 times a year. I'm down for an entire week, doing courses during the week, but I have my evenings because there's not a lot to do out there, but I'm in a hotel room, so I'm happy to go to the installations or go to a coffee shop and meet with spouses and talk to them about their career hurdles, wording on resumes to get through the door, to tackle those the shifts that you have to make in your career as you're moving around and how to approach that. And so I am more than happy to go out and sit with spouses during that time that I'm out there, and to request additional times to go out if that's necessary.
Huddles with Heather.
Yeah.
Oh,
there
we
we
go.
go.
I like it. Good marketing. Good on you.
I'm actually going to use that.
It's yours.
Thank you.
I like it.
Vera, do
the
you want?
last 20 feet? That's my charge, right? And then and I think so. Very based on what you're saying, I'm going to challenge we have a lot of officers in charge out there, a lot of senior enlisted folks that are running a unit. Well, guess who they know? They know everybody in that small town. So I'm gonna challenge them, and I'm gonna have the admiral challenge them on, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing to help network? I mean, and it could be that simple. Is, hey, I got a spouse coming in. He or she does this. When I'm out in a Chamber of Commerce meeting or community event, I'll just put that out there.
That's awesome.
That's not bad.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Vera.
She's my muse.
Well, I can't do a huddle with Heather V for whatever, but I'm happy to support the region in any way I can, whether it's at the state level or congressional or senatorial environment, or just with the spouse over coffee. I'm happy to share my experiences as a Coast Guard spouse and my experience transitioning my own career over many years. And reinvent, the art of reinvention really is, that's what it'll be, Vera for reinvention. How about that?
There we
I like that.
Because I think that there's a lot of that goes on if you're not on a singular career track of teaching or nursing or what have you. Really, I was a package of skills as I moved from location to location, and that's what I would put forth to people, because I worked in so many different industries and fields that I would just like to encourage military spouses who are at the front end of their careers to think about flexibility, and that doesn't necessarily mean underemployment. It just means repackaging the talents that you have to suit the needs of an employer wherever you are, whether it's in the public, private, or nonprofit sectors. All of them could benefit from your resilience, flexibility, and dedication to doing a great job.
Awesome.
And that's what it's about.
Thank you very much. Madison.
Yeah, and so I think there's been so much good discussion today. Thank you so much for having me, and we'll take all this back to Senator Cantwell. Aside from that very direct idea from Heather about military spouse compact, I was really thinking about in terms of like being a resource. We have a really robust constituent services and casework team in our office. I hope many of you talked with Will Willis in our Tacoma office, who handles military and veterans affairs, and we try our best to be a resource for active duty military members and veterans. And I'd love to kind of expand that to include these concerns of military spouses and include some of these resources that you have all talked about creating, so that we can kind of work in partnership on a more informal level, aside from just creating laws, but also just acting as a resource to direct people to things that are already in existence. And we do that now, and we'd love to expand that to include military spouses.
Awesome. Thanks, Madison. Jen.
I want to be your last 20 feet.
Awesome. Very simple. Mike.
The next 3 to 6 months, we'll be launching a returning adult initiative. Again, we're around education, higher education. So the initiative is and there will be an app for that and all the rest, but it's meant to work both with the institutions to make them more friendly to the returning adult population than maybe they traditionally are. But it's to help people, it's to help adults, anyone who's been disconnected. So an adult could be someone who's 20 years old, just has been out of education for a year or more. Help them connect to post-secondary opportunities, connected to job opportunities that they're looking for, how to find the availability of the programs either in the backyard or available through distance learning options. And community colleges and Washington State University here are a fairly robust menu of distance learning options. And it is a curated partner, so we're not going to send you to a predatory institution. And it will help you figure out how to pay for it, and tools, that kind of stuff. So as we do that, we have audiences that we can identify through various data sets we have with past students in the state and people who got financial aid in the state, and we'll be doing things along that. It probably will not capture, a lot of the spousal. It's just a lot of people it's not going to capture, but certainly that. So anything that we can do to both, share it with you if it's relevant to your audiences, you can share it with your audiences. People could use it before they come here if they're bound for a Washington assignment. But then also the notion of, is there a way within it to perhaps create a pathway or something that is, you can even identify yourself, as a spouse or whatever, and then as that then want to connect you, we can connect you. Because we're also doing some other tools initially around just financial aid access, which is a responsive text-based chatbot, which we could actually start to blend together over time, so that we could actually be able to deal with people in the communication channel of text that they like to use, et cetera, whatever. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think we found our tech experts.
What?
We found our tech experts.
Oh, yeah,
We're already
yeah,
building the app as I watch. So the first thing I'm going to bring back is the Congresswoman sits on the Education and Labor Committee. So this stuff definitely falls under the purview of that committee. I would probably say that, Alfie has just been an amazing resource in general for us. I know that she visited the Congresswoman last time she was in DC. Would love to get any bill recommendations and whatnot from y'all. That is certainly a thing you can demand of us. I mean, we work for you, so don't forget that. So you can ask us to drop a bill or look at different pieces of legislation. And then the second thing is that every congressional district in the state of Washington has a military base in it. Ours is the Coast Guard. Everybody else has a different faction. So for us, our focus a lot of times is on the Coast Guard because they're part of the Department of Homeland Security. They are so forgotten. There's been so many military events where they don't even say Coast Guard to stand up for veterans, which I find horrible. But
Messaged half of them.
but I think the big emphasis for us is in making sure that we don't just include DoD folks when we're talking about these conversations, but including DHS folks in different ways that we can actually improve that communication, because you're running against a whole lot of bureaucracy just to do the decent thing of keeping all your folks in communication and their families. So that's something that there's some issues on accessibility end, but there's a lot that we can do in the governmental end just to like clear up a little bit of the mess, get out of our own way so we can clear the path for you to walk through the door. Because right now we're kind of, I don't want us to be part of the problem. We've got to get out of our own way. So those two things I'm going to take back, and you know, if there's ever any meetings specifically you want to have with the Congresswoman, as constituents, as Coast Guard families, you know, she's not in town this week, but that's something that we've done veterans roundtables and whatnot. That's something that definitely has come up into my head, whether it's a symposium or having a roundtable meeting with the Congresswoman with spouses. I think would be a big benefit because I think she would love to hear from folks personally.
Great.
So a lot.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
So I think in order to really solve any issue, you got to know how big a scope the issue is, how big a problem it is. And I think that's where the biggest barrier comes with military spouses, is because you have several governmental systems you can pull veteran data from, and you have your veteran data, you know, veterans are unemployed, but you don't really know how big this issue is out here with military spouses, because a lot of times the way you find out someone's a military spouse is they have to self-identify, and a lot of times they don't do that because it then works against them for employment purposes. You know, so that's the thing. I think that's the 18,000-pound gorilla we got sitting in the room. You know, how do we overcome that when we don't know how big the problem is? What I'm going to do walking out of here, and it's something that what you said on, and we kind of heard a little bit about, and I also lived through the last year, is come up with some type of communication strategy where we can figure out how to filter all these enormous resources. There's all these resources out there, but how can we get it to you where it's palatable, where you don't feel overwhelmed? Like you say, oh, you know, I want this or that, but you just seem to get flooded. And when I say communication strategy, it's not necessarily just on social media. It could be in person. It could be several different ways. You know, what's your audience? What's your message? And what platform are you using to reach that audience? And I think that's really the only thing we can do, because we don't even know if we'll solve this problem, because we don't have the, you know, we can't measure it. But we could definitely make some progress if we can get the information to the people that are out there and in a way that they don't feel overwhelmed. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to work on some communication.
Thank you very much.
All right, and I think Gary and I will pass in the interest of time. Susie, would you like to make any closing remarks?
Well, just again to thank all of you, and for those who participated online, we so deeply appreciate it. This is a listening tour to really hear what are the issues, what are the ideas, what are the opportunities. And so it's only collectively that we're going to be able to resolve this challenge that our military spouses have and face on a daily basis. And when we do, it will make us safer as a nation. It will help contribute to our prosperity, both locally and nationally. And it will help our emotional well-being collectively. So I'm very excited about the prospects of what we get to do together. And I'm looking forward to collaborating with you, and everybody's still on the hook to do so. So thank you for volunteering. All right, have a great rest of your day.
Excellent, thank you so much. And we will be following up with summary notes of this event for everybody who participated. We also have a survey which will be included with that, so you can forward that to anybody who is also not able to participate. The Facebook Live event will be posted on the WDVA's website, and so please pass it along to friends and family, and they can also add additional comments there, which will be included in our final summary report. Thank you, everyone, and we are signing off from Coast Guard Base Seattle.